Hello, and welcome to the County Library's Let's Be Neighbors program. This is a community-driven program where we bring in experts that talk about topics that are important to the community, that are important to you as citizens in Utah, and we bring in these experts that can talk about these issues and provide the best information and resources for you for any of these topics. And for tonight, we are focusing on aging individuals. And as we know, as our population in Utah grows, so it goes in numbers and as well as age. And we have loved ones, we ourselves are aging, and so we want to give you guys an empowered path for loved ones or for yourself. And so all of our experts here are going to discuss these resources and information, strategies to live the most fulfilling and connected life, because that is another huge part of Let's Be Neighbors, is how to connect together as a community and to uplift and help one another. And so for tonight, we have a fantastic lineup of presenters. We have Megan Schmidt, who is the training manager at the Utah Department of Health and Human Resources Adult Protective Services, or APS. Megan has been with the APS for over 4 years and within the human services field for 12 years. After Megan speaks, we'll have Tracy Gibson, and she is the Volunteer Services Program Manager for Aging and Adult Services and is a part of the Community Engagement Department. Tracy has been with the division for 13 years and has over 30 years of public service experience. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is Rob Entz, and he is the Executive Director of the Utah Commission on Aging, which is a governor-appointed position, and he will have some incredible resources for you as well. And so again, if you have any questions for our presenters, feel free to put them into the chat all along the way. That is the value of being able to be here live. Some of you may have come with questions. If there's something interesting during the presentation, just put them in and we will be able to answer them all at the very end. And without further ado, I will give the information over to Megan. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Heather, and thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. This is a topic that it's not just part of my job, but it's also just something that I'm very passionate about, and especially as it relates to Utah and our aging population, I want to make sure that as much kind of awareness can be brought as possible. So I am with the Division of Aging and Adult Services. My area is Adult Protective Services, and if you can advance the slide. All right. So this is just a quick overview of our vision and mission within the Division of Aging and Adult Services. And what I want to point out, and kind of what's most important to me, is what our vision statement is. So that offering choices for independence. And what that means is that we are looking for services, resources, lifestyles, and the aging process to look how older adults want in the community. So it's not just how other people, family, loved ones, medical providers feel that we best age, it's also how that individual wants to age. So that's a big part of the services that we bring forward, and also just kind of our focus overall within adult protective services. Next slide, please. So we are going to focus for a little bit on social isolation. It's a area that's getting more traction in terms of, you'll maybe hear a little bit more about it in the news and read more stories about it, but it's something that's important for us to talk about, knowing that there's signs and symptoms that we sometimes miss or we may perceive as something else. And it really could be that older adult is experiencing a situation of isolation or feelings of loneliness. Next slide, please. So some indicators of social isolation. The top 5 are more of the kind of the general things that we would usually think about when it comes to isolation or somebody feeling lonely in their home. So it's kind of when we see individuals that are starting to withdraw a little bit. There's maybe not as much engagement. They are maybe withdrawing from some of their activities or their peer groups that they had maybe spent time with. We sometimes think about those situations where people, there's a term or phrase used where somebody kind of lets themselves go. So they're not as focused on their hygiene. They're not worried as much about their nutrition. They're just kind of overall care. And that also plays into something that we see oftentimes with adult protective services, is that concern that somebody's home is becoming cluttered, it's becoming unsafe, or it's moving into that situation of maybe the home is starting to look hoarded. So those are kind of those typical things that we think about. And one of the biggest ones that we kind of associate with that isolation piece is just somebody that's living alone or they're unmarried or widowed. It's just natural to think that they maybe just don't have as much engagement as others. The bottom 5 are some of those less thought about indicators that are really important to know because they may actually be more prominent than those ones on the top. So having a small social network as we age, it's natural that our kind of friend groups are going to get a little bit smaller. But then when you play into that emotionally distant relationships, that could be those relationships that are a little bit more out of convenience. So family members or friends that are kind of reaching out when they need something, or they come around when it's more convenient for them. Those are kind of the situations that would be a little bit more of concern. And that increased buying habit seems like an odd one to think about, but we oftentimes are looking at people that are maybe spending their money or enjoying basically retirement. And so we think like they must be doing things for themselves or they must be enjoying this time. But in reality, they could be using that spending as a way to kind of fill that feeling of loneliness. And that increased internet usage kind of goes along the same lines with the concerns that we have for our youth in terms of social media usage, but then also just kind of overall internet usage. It's a good idea to have a good understanding in terms of how to check your bank account and to how to access services online. We also want to make sure that it's not going into the realm to where it could be detrimental or it could put somebody at risk. And the last one on there is anger, because that's often masked for sadness or loneliness, and it can be difficult to address that in a relationship if it's strained, if it's emotionally distant, if there are concerns. Next slide. So I like this quote. I think it kind of sums up the importance of maintaining that social engagement. So that interaction with peers, time spent with family, and a community support system can help prevent senior isolation and lead to improved physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Next slide. So that leads into what we can do in our community to kind of reduce social isolation. And it's not just if you work in the aging field or the helping profession, it's also what you can do for your friends, your family, your neighbors, those people that you maybe don't have a regular relationship with, but where it could be beneficial for both parties to start a relationship. So that first one of engaging and encouraging friends and family to stop and stay a while. That one is crucial as it relates to isolation, because it's not just the idea of visiting during holidays or milestones. It's having those regular visits that are consistent and that they have a purpose. So you're going there to engage with that older adult and spend time with them, enjoy their interests. And also that plays into the next one of it's not just your interest or why you would want to be there, you're sharing in their interest as well. So it's kind of the idea of, we've heard stories of younger grandchildren that are going over and teaching their grandparents on how to play a certain video game, or they're going and they're asking their grandparent to come to their class and volunteer. So it's kind of those things of where we're getting individuals kind of across the lifespan and across that to be able to help and develop those relationships, which are so crucial. We encourage exercise and kind of making their health a priority. The reason why that's so important, beyond just kind of the idea that we know that walking, cardiovascular health, resistance training is important throughout our lifetime. The other reason why it's so important, and something we may not think about, but if you establish yourself in a fitness group or a fitness class and you go consistently, if all of a sudden you stop showing up to that class, you have a whole group of people that are wondering where you are. Are you okay? Is something happening? And so just by having that one connection, it kind of builds an entire community of people that are around you. And the last one that's on there, considering a pet. If you are lucky enough to have a pet in your life, you know kind of that emotional benefit that it brings. But it also could just be, if you are a family member that has a pet, bringing that over to interact with, or taking your dog for a walk and stopping off at a neighbor's house to check in to see how they're doing. There's a lot of small things that can be done that can have a big impact. Next slide. So that social isolation piece plays kind of directly into the role that I have through Adult Protective Services and our investigators that we have throughout the state. So we know that individuals that are experiencing a level of isolation or feelings of loneliness, they are more likely, unfortunately, to experience abuse, neglect, or exploitation in their lifetime. And so they're also at a higher rate of being more vulnerable for that abuse to be repeated in the future. Next slide. So just a quick of who Adult Protective Services is. We are the state agency with the Utah Department of Health and Human Services with the responsibility and authority to investigate abuse, neglect, and exploitation involving vulnerable adults. Next slide. So this is a new poster that recently was created for Adult Protective Services. If you visit a loved one in a assisted living or a care center, or if you stop into Salt Lake County Aging sometime in the future, you may see this poster or this flyer. It gives kind of a brief overview, but an impactful overview of those signs and symptoms that we're looking for with our investigations that we do. So it's a good thing for you to just spend some time to familiarize yourself with what abuse could look like in older adults or for individuals that are most vulnerable. It's sometimes things that we don't always think about, especially as it relates to the concerns for individuals being financially exploited or being isolated. What we know, unfortunately, is that if you are at risk for that in your lifetime, it's likely going to be an immediate family member. So somebody close to you that's going to be the person that's perpetrating that. And so we want to make sure that we can empower our older and vulnerable adults in the community, but then also caretakers, family, friends, neighbors, so that they can kind of spot those signs and make sure that we can help keep those in the community safe. Next slide. So this I like, it's a good, quick, easy kind of little snapshot in terms of how to understand what financial exploitation looks like. And the reason why it's important, it's our fastest growing allegation in Utah, but then also across the nation. So we have more and more cases of financial exploitation coming in for older or vulnerable adults than any other form of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And the warning signs are subtle. It's not, you're not looking for bruises, you're not looking for people's hygiene cares to not being cared for. What you're oftentimes seeing and what you're noticing is all of a sudden somebody's will or trust is changed and something's different, or there's all of a sudden multiple ATM withdrawals and you know that your loved one either doesn't drive or doesn't know how to retrieve money out of their ATM. So there's subtle things that we're oftentimes looking for that if you're helping a loved one or an older adult, a neighbor in the community kind of manage their finances or have a better understanding, there's simple things that you can kind of look for, even spending that seems inconsistent with what's out there. An example I can give is that we have cases where individuals, they don't drive and they maybe have a caregiver that helps bring groceries into the home for them, but they also have another family member that lives there. And there's frequent drive-through charges, and there's frequent ATM withdrawals, and there's frequent just trips to various stores throughout the community. And we know that that person is not going out in the community to spend that money. So those are just some of the things that we're looking for. Other times it's really subtle things to where all of a sudden somebody's power of attorney, their primary agent, has been changed. And it may not be something that's noticed until somebody would maybe require hospitalization or some medical decision making to take place. Next slide. So this is just kind of a good overview. It's something that I actually use for myself and for my family. They're just tips and just simple things that can be done to really help reduce the risk for not just seniors or older adults in the community, but everybody, to reduce kind of their risk and also to kind of serve as those protective factors. The one to me that stands out that's the most important, and we talked about a little bit with the isolation piece, is that staying active in the community and connecting with those family and friends. So we know that it'll decrease your social isolation, but we also know that it serves as a protective factor to help prevent individuals from being at the risk of abuse or neglect in their future. The other things that we recommend for everyone, it's actually something that we recommend for our new investigators that are starting, for them to have a strong understanding of their financial literacy, to know how to check their online bank account, or if they don't use online banking, what is their means of checking their bank account? How do they know how the money is coming in or out of that account? Have they been in contact recently with whatever their source of income is to make sure that things are still coming into the right account? There's little things that can be done that can have a big impact. Opening your own mail, depositing your own checks, reviewing your legal documents on a regular basis, those are all strong protective factors that you can do on your own, or if you have a trusted individual that can help you kind of go through those things. And the one that's down on the bottom, that knowing your rights, that one is important because we're oftentimes assuming that whoever put a service into place or helped engage in those services, so like a medical provider or a family member, that they would know best. And so we oftentimes don't always want to question the services or the care that's being provided, but it's really important to know that if you are engaging in services, you have the right to know what those services look like, and you also have the right to say that I don't like this, or this doesn't look like how I'm wanting it to look, and you have the right to make a change to it. Next slide. Lastly, we're just going to talk on mandatory reporting. So if you are a resident that lives in Utah, you are a mandatory reporter. It's different than a lot of other states to where it's those that work in law enforcement, education, social work, medical. Those are who we think about oftentimes for mandatory reporting. But in Utah, any person who has a reason to believe that a vulnerable adult has been the subject of abuse, neglect, or exploitation shall immediately notify APS, so Adult Protective Services intake, or the nearest law enforcement agency. And so it's either one of those entities, either law enforcement or contacting our intake line is the best way in order to make those reports. So next slide. And here's our reporting information. So any concerns that you would have to make for a report for vulnerable adult abuse, neglect, or exploitation, we are available Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, and there's our 1-800 number, so the 1-800-371-7897, or you have the option to make an online referral, and that is where you type in all of the information and then you'd submit the form, and that's at dos.utah.gov. And next slide. Lastly, just to touch on our Utah crisis number has changed. It changed last summer, but it's just a good thing just to talk about. It's no longer the 273 talk number. Now anybody in the state can dial 988 from their phones, and it will connect them to a trained crisis worker. And what we've seen, and it directly relates to the isolation piece that we've talked about, that we've seen an increase in older adults in the community experiencing mental health concerns and crisis. So just knowing that that service is available, you can talk to somebody over the phone, you can text, there's a lot of different options in order to connect with somebody. And then referrals can be made, or it can just be a conversation that you have to help field that support. And next slide. And finally, here's my contact information. Please reach out with any questions. You can call our intake line. There's lots of different avenues in order to help keep our older adults and vulnerable adults protected in the state. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Megan. That was a lot of really useful information, not even for aging adults, so it can go widespread, but especially for those we care about in the community as well, because there's neighbors, there's people, and I actually didn't know that about mandatory reporting, so that was also very useful, so thank you. All right, we will just go segue straight into Tracy and let her continue the momentum that we have. So thank you, and carry on, Tracy.
Awesome. Well, I'm very happy to be here. And although it says Janae Martinson or Tanya Nagahira on here, they did create this. I'm using it because it's so awesome. And I'm really happy to be here because I'm fully invested into our aging population. I actually am going on my 14th year serving with aging adult services in a variety of capacities. And the one thing that I have enjoyed and believe wholeheartedly that we are definitely doing great by our seniors, but we can always do more. And so I appreciate Megan. I appreciate everything that DOS does to investigate and to make awareness of fraud and people abusing and, taking advantage of our aging population. And so we are a great cohort to DOS. And so aging in Salt Lake County. Next slide. What is aging? What do you picture when you think of old age? For me, I was about 25 and I was working for the Division of Child and Family Services, and there was some 45-year-olds over another office, and I thought, geez, those ladies are old. Now that I'm pushing 60, I don't think 45 is too old anymore. So we all have a different idea of what aging looks like. Next slide. We have a 30-year span of services, a 30-year span of ages that we serve, because we can have a 6-year-old to a 95 or 100-year-old. So our design a program or programs that assist the aging. Different age groups have different needs, but we have tried to make those revisions so that we can be aware of what's going on in the community and what the needs are. Next slide. Common considerations for older adults: health, physical health, brain health, mental health, mobility. Mobility changes, definitely sometimes health and isolation definitely go up. Isolation, transportation, abuse, exploitation, as Megan spoke to, housing, special populations that have English as a second language find it more difficult to get services because they don't know where to go or who to speak to, and caregiving. Next slide. Generations of older adults. Older adults, the silent generation, they had traditional values. They use pen and paper generally, and they value loyalty and more intensive health care needs because they are our older adults. Our younger older adults are our boomers. They're more progressive. They are digitally connected, and they want a sense of purpose, and they're working to preserve their good health. I have 2,500 volunteers that serve for aging and adult services, and a good chunk of them are our boomers, and they are very well connected with the digital capacity of today. Next slide. Aging and Adult Services is a division with Human Services Department of Salt Lake County, and our goal, our mission, is to help older adults stay socially connected and living independently as long as possible. We are champions for older adults, and we stand with seniors and their families. Next slide. We are fortunate to have 4 programs that represent aging and adult services, and each have a unique quality on how to serve the aging population. Supported aging covers in-home services, which I will get into in the next slide, nursing home diversion, special population, caregiver support, and homeless outreach. Tanya Nagahiro is pictured in the supported aging. She is the section manager over supported aging, and many of you may have talked to her or seen her or know her. She is very knowledgeable in in-home services. Independent aging is our famous Meals on Wheels program and our Rise for Wellness program, which is gaining a lot of attention. And as you see in this picture, it's Russ Stoddard. He is the independent aging section manager. Active aging is our senior recreation centers. We mostly refer to them as senior centers, and we have 15 of them all through the county. And they are so active and so amazing. And we have health promotion classes that are virtual and in the senior centers, and the classes are generally always full because they are so loved. The community engagement section is where I belong. And as you can see, Preston Hutchings is the section manager and active aging. Don't want to not give him his credit. Community engagement pictured is Janae Mortensen, who created this with Tanya Nagahiro, and she is my supervisor. We oversee the information referral of incoming calls. We have an ombudsman, and she has a staff of 5 that go into residents care, and we'll get more into it, but take complaints from the residents. Volunteer services, that's me. We have volunteers in every program that you can see on this slide, and they are serving in many capacities. We have 1,000 active volunteers just alone in Meals on Wheels and Medicare counseling. Many of you who have Medicare know how difficult it is, and having a counselor that isn't selling you anything, that is only looking after your best interest, is what we provide. And it is complicated to find the right resources for your health needs. And so we're grateful that we have a Medicare counselor with Aging and Adult Services. Next slide. In-home services, supported aging program, provides services for adults who are at risk for nursing home placement. Caregiver Support provides respite, support, information, education, and resources on behalf or for the caregiver. Utah has the largest caregiving population in the nation. Homeless outreach. Client liaison helps older adults find housing and or avoid homelessness, which, as we all know, is a large undertaking and ongoing and large in the community of Salt Lake County. Next slide. Meals and medical transportation. The Meals on Wheels program is very well known, and we deliver between 1,300 and 1,500 meals a day. For some, it is the only meal that they receive during the day, and 45% of the meals are delivered by volunteers that are delivering one meal a day several times a month, depending on the routes that they belong to. The 55% are paid by paid drivers. As you can see in this picture, we have trucks that can load up tons and tons of meals, and they do nothing but deliver Meals on Wheels all day. We ask for a donation of $2.50 per meal, but it is only a donation. It's not required, and you will still get a meal if you can't make the donation. Rights for Wellness is gaining popularity because if you have a medical appointment that you must get to, especially a critical medical appointment, we can schedule you far in advance so that you'll always make your appointment. And this has been life-changing for so many people because it is by a trusted person taking you to these appointments. And the requested donation is $2 for one-way ride. Next slide, please. The senior centers and health promotion. Now you can see these two dancing their day away, which is happening all over the senior centers in the valley. We actually have 15 senior centers, recreation centers throughout the county for people age 60 and older. They do crafts, eat lunch, take classes, spend time with friends, and reduce isolation. We have vans that pick up individuals in their area to attend that senior center, and we have virtual classes so individuals can watch and do the classes from home. The health promotion has improved so many lives because of the evidence-based programs. I was a manager at many senior centers, and many of the participants of the enhanced fitness class said that after a week taking the class, they felt like they had more mobility, they could have more, they could walk longer without being out of breath. And it's because they do a pre and post test, and individuals are really encouraged to take and do the class 3 days a week. We have lots of classes that have really changed lives: living well with chronic conditions, walk with ease for those that have difficulty with mobility and have lost some of their strength. This is a really great class to get them up and starting to be more mobile. And then stepping on is our fall prevention, because falls lead to so many other difficulties in the aging process. Next slide, please. Information, advocacy, and volunteering is community engagement where I belong. We have the Ombudsman Program, which is supporting and protecting the rights of individuals in long-term care facilities. We have the Outreach Program, which is our wonderful case managers and phone staff that take all the calls that come in for people that are just wondering what we have to offer them or what it is that can relieve some of the burden that they're going through. We provide information about our services and help find individuals and families with all the many options that we have. SHIP is the Medicare program that screens the applicants and helps warn them about fraud and abuse, because it is rampant. And they told me when we did one of our most recent trainings that when they close down one fraud scheme, 10 more pop up. So they're just always revolving. The volunteer programs really make aging adult services reach more individuals in the Valley. I'm so proud to say that we have 2,500 volunteers serving in our programs, which makes the reach of our services so much wider. And without them, we wouldn't be able to see as many people face to face and check in on them with our Meals on Wheels program or with our Senior Companion program or the many other programs that volunteers serve in. And we just help them stay engaged and active through all the things that volunteers are supporting with the seniors. Next slide. This says 22 highlights, and it is. They haven't updated to 2023. But last year, we posted that 10,650 individuals, seniors, attended the 15 senior centers. 841 people participated in the virtual senior centers. We served 224,665 meals in senior centers, and we served over 397,000 meals to homebound seniors. We provided 41,320 rides to critical medical appointments and 630 clients with in-home services. The Meals on Wheels delivered 230,000 meals and volunteers delivered 100,000. Rides for Wellness provided 41. Oh, those are volunteer highlights. I apologize. The provided companionship, the program that I oversee saw 350 isolated seniors, helping them age in their home. And we have a foster grandparent program that tutored 357 children in elementary schools and preschools. 318 showed significant improvement in reading skills. This is the volunteer side of the highlights. Next slide. We have a referral line, which is the 385-468-3200 for information and services. Means that you can call there and find someone that is going to direct you to the service that is going to best suit your situation. And if not, they will find someone or find the service that you need, even if we don't offer it. To volunteer in the programs that I oversee is 385-468-3240. And next slide. I'd like to thank you all for being here. We've got 39 individuals on this Zoom. It's pretty awesome. And I appreciate the opportunity to come this evening. And I hope that there's questions that I can answer if anyone has any. And thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. And yeah, there was a wealth of resources as well throughout the county, and the senior centers are all across the Valley. They're connected to the county system, and I love that you mentioned the reading program, because I don't know if we're direct partners, but we've done similar things, and it is really incredible to see the flip side. Like, there's ways for us, like anyone, to engage with loved ones or community members of connecting with them as they age, but also where aging individuals can become very empowered and connect themselves. And just from that perspective, there is huge improvement when we've been able to do those things with, like, at the library with kids pairing up with readers, and that intergenerational connection, but also seeing their minds expand through those stories they tell, but also just the sheer reading where there is vast improvement in those students. And so seeing that there's a lasting impact, and it's just a cool thing. So side anecdote, making my heart go.
It's one of my most treasured programs because of the health and the benefits to the volunteers being able to get out, and they are themselves seniors. So the benefit of their having less isolation and more access to resources because they come to training. So I feel like it is just a really good revolving, practice to volunteer when you can, because especially with aging, because you're able to bring in those resources and that information and kindness. And we love to get an eye on our clients, because then we can see what is happening in their home and check on them. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for the incredible resources as well. All right, so moving straight along, we're going to go straight into Rob Entz's presentation, and keep the comments and the questions coming. We are still cataloging all of them. And again, if we get them early, the presenters and experts they can formulate responses to those questions. So feel free just to populate the chat and we'll carry on. So take it away, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to thank all of you for joining tonight. This has been an incredibly pleasant period of time. The air is cooling, the sun's been out, and here we are on Zoom talking with each other, or on WebEx. But it's important to take time to learn about the resources. And I have to say that these colleagues from Salt Lake County Aging and from Adult Protective Services at the Division of Aging Adult Services are extraordinary people. And they and their staff mates do incredible work for the community. They are the angels of our society, as far as I'm concerned, and helping individuals do the things that they need to have a wonderful experience during their aging journey, and also helping people in time of need. So I appreciate them, and actually work very closely with both of them. And Adult Protective Services, we co-sponsor with the Commission on Aging an annual summit on fraud and abuse. And Salt Lake County, I can't name the many areas that we cross over. So just a little bit about the Commission on Aging. The Commission on Aging has been around for almost 18 years now. And I think that there are a lot of folks who may not be completely aware of its existence and what it does. But the idea behind it is to make sure that Utahns are prepared for the aging experience, and that the organizations that provide services, including government agencies, are addressing the growing demographic. And we all know that the age 65 plus population will soon represent about 20% of our entire state population in the next 10 to 15 years. And that presents some unique challenges that we definitely want to be prepared for. So the Commission on Aging has a couple of very important roles that have been established by statute. It is appointed by the governor. It's housed at the University of Utah, but it serves the entire state. And what it does is it brings together the elements of public policy, research and academia, and the community resources, from which you've heard today. These are two great examples of those touch points with the community. In the middle of all this is to create a communication system that helps inform the public, informs policymakers, informs the researchers, as well as supports and helps inform and cross-fertilize with all of the community resource providers. And so the Utah Commission on Aging has, as we talked today a little bit about some of those resources that we've created to that end. You already heard conversation from Megan and also Tracy related to the many issues that can overwhelm us as we age. And of this list of things, the things that at some point in your life, 1, 2, 3, and hopefully not all, but they hit us at some point. And these are things that we have to address. And you'll remember that Megan talked a great deal about social isolation, which happens to be one of the most significant factors of the aging experience and a great contributor to the well-being of an individual. And lack of that sociality and connectivity with folks often has very adverse effects with our health, both our physical, our mental, and our spiritual well-being. But these are all issues that the colleagues you've heard from address every day in someone's lives. There are also stages of impact. And just because we get older does not mean that we go from complete independence to dependency. We're pretty dependent when we're very young, and then we grow into a degree of independence. And then there are points in our lives where we engage with others and we become interdependent. And then there are times we become dependent. You can be dependent as an individual with a disability at a very young age. You can become dependent if you lose some of your abilities the older you get as well. And then you get into crisis management, and ultimately you have to make decisions about end of life, whether that comes at age 40, 50, or 90. The question really remains for all of us is who gets to choose? Who gets to choose the circumstances that we manage these things? Everybody is entitled to have their own set of values. They are entitled to have their desired outcomes, how they would like to be treated. They should know what the costs and the timing of their choices represent. They should understand the impact this has on relationships that they have in their lives. If I choose to make a decision about something as an individual, it has an impact on my family members, my spouse or our partners. And understanding those things are very important. But the most important thing I want you to remember tonight is that if you fail to choose, if you fail to try to make decisions that are consistent with your value system, then other systems will act upon you. Services will be provided that you may not have wanted, whether they be medical or otherwise. And what you want to make sure you do is have the most control you possibly can for as long as you can in your life. We went through a period of time where we experienced some significant shutdown. And this we refer to, of course, as the COVID pandemic. And reflecting back on that, there are many, many things that occurred that helped us sort of reshift our thinking. Some of it is we became more dependent upon technology. And if there were problems that existed in terms of like social isolation and those things, they got worse. Incidents of abuse doubled. Incidents of isolation doubled. And all of these things just became more compounded if, in fact, they existed before. The other thing we have to deal with is there are finite resources. We will never have all of the people we would like to have to provide the wonderful services that were described by Tracy and the county. There are limits in terms of personnel. There are limits in terms of budget. And the other thing is we want to make sure that the things that are available to us out there are affordable. I saw a question pop up on chat about the services they offer. Are they free or do people have to pay for these things? The beautiful thing is there are so many services that are provided because of our tax base and the way our systems are set up that you can get great advice and information at no cost. They're there to serve. But there are other services that are really critical. For example, technology. And one of the big issues that the Utah Commission on Aging is involved in is helping make sure that older adults have equity and equitable access to services that they can find through technology. But to do that, you have to have services that are not only available in the community, you have to have services that are affordable, and then you also have to have the ability to utilize them. You have to have a device, you have to have knowledge to know how to use a device. And all of these things come into play if you're going to have success and confidence in utilizing technology to be informed and to utilize services. And that leads us to the point of what it means to be an advocate mentor. It was also mentioned earlier in the conversation by our colleagues here about the critical nature of having financial literacy. There are 4 key buckets here that I put in where literacy is something that is a challenge for a lot of Utahns. The ability to use technology confidently and safely is one. The ability to have literacy around health, not just health and wellness, but be able to understand discharge orders or prescription orders, the kinds of things that if we're care partners or if we're actually the patient, being able to understand what is asked of us and have the literacy level to understand the medical terminology and the requirements. Financial literacy we've talked about. Legal literacy. There are times families are confronted with the idea of guardianships or conservatorships or preparing end-of-life decisions and wills and trusts. Being able to be conversant about those things, to understand the implications of your choices is very, very critical. The Utah Commission on Aging is committed to creating a wealth of resources as a one-stop shop for individuals virtually to find a lot of this information. We created the Virtual Resource Center that I'll show you in just a moment, which is called utahaging.org. If you know how to get help at Adult Protective Services or at Salt Lake Area Agency on Aging, or the state health insurance program, for example, you go directly there. That's great. But if you don't know then we ask people to go to utahaging.org and let us help you navigate what that resource is about and how to get there efficiently. We also have an event management program where all of the things that were being described, like dancing at the senior centers or other, Tai Chi classes or wellness classes or conferences related to fraud and abuse. The website has one place where people can go and they can see these kinds of events going on throughout the state, regardless of where they live. The things that are coming is kind of an amplification of the call center that Tracy was talking about, Salt Lake County, that provides information as well as referral resources to help with the demand that they have, but also provide resource information across the state. But there's another reason why that's important, is that people can then be lined up with a volunteer to receive mentoring on technology services, on financial and health and legal literacy. So it becomes a mentoring tool as well, where volunteers will be able to help spend time with individuals, again, to help them get comfortable and learn the things they need to know in order to navigate these resources successfully. And that's our Digital Navigator volunteer program. We've piloted the program. It's ready to function. What we're looking for now is the sustainable funding. That's always the catch. This shares a little bit about the virtual ecosystem around the Utah Commission on Aging. And so I've already discussed with you the Virtual Resource Center. We have a YouTube channel with a lot of resources on there. It does podcasts. We have Facebook presence. And then the hotline, which will go live this fall with the resources that I talked about in terms of being able to talk to mentors. All of these things come together and are part of a strategy that is being supported by a master plan on aging for the state of Utah. So every area agency, every division of the state has a plan for the things that they need to accomplish to support the funding sources that they get. Organizations like the Alzheimer's Association and its affiliated Utah Alzheimer's Disease and Related Dementias Council, which is housed in the Department of Health and Human Services. And you can almost name any organization, a program of volunteers who have come together to create a caregiver plan for the state of Utah. All these plans are great, but the important thing is that you need to be able to have this all add up to something with working synergies in the state so that we have some very clearly defined goals in the short term as well as every 10-year period to address the needs of the state and to make sure that all Utahns are prepared for their best living experience. So part of our goal with the Commission on Aging is to help work with the Utah Broadband Coalition and to connect all Utahns. So that's just a snapshot, and I'm now going to just share with you really quickly a little bit about the Utah Aging website. This again is free and available to everybody. The kind of information that you can find on the website. We have an area in here where people have individuals throughout the state who are specialists on a variety of topics that are willing to come out and have conversations with your civic group, your church group, to talk about anything related to aging. And that's available again for free. There are issues throughout the state that I talk about. You can think of any particular topic. I mentioned the Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, fighting ageism is an issue, exploring arts and aging and how that plays into the world of aging and the richness. Aging is not just about meeting the challenges of what can be diminishing abilities. It's also the opportunity to explore things and experience a part of life through music and arts and travel and a lifelong learning. And all of those resources can be found, again, either directly or using the utahaging.org website as a point of a launching point to navigate to those opportunities. Another thing you can find on the website are the nuanced pieces of what is the area aging on aging and what do they do, and that kind of thing that Trace works on. There's a whole explanation of the many services they provide. when I have spoken to groups before, they often don't realize that these services that Tracy outlined are available to them. And they go, I had no idea this existed. And then, of course, the Utah Division of Age and Adult Services, where the Adult Protective Services resides, is also here. And you can find information for every county agency throughout the state. We're dividing into 12 different areas for area agencies on aging. All of this information is navigable and found, through the UtahAging.org website. And there's many, many more things. Tapping into volunteer opportunities, which can route you to some of the AAAs and some of the other places where individuals work. There's education for professionals wanting to be involved in gerontology or geriatrics training, in the health community. I mentioned lifelong learning, which is a wonderful area to explore, and all the programs from Rhodes Scholar and from Go Learn at the University of Utah, and many, many more. So the world is out there to be explored. We all on this call want to help you know that there is a richness to the aging experience. We love to have you take advantage of it. We love to also make sure that you understand where you can find the assistance and the help that you need should it arise in your personal life or in the life of one of your loved ones. I'll take a wrap right there. And I know one question popped up. I don't know if you want to address the question is, are these services also channeled through 211? 211 is a really crucial community service, and they do specialize in referral for immediate services for a variety of things, sometimes related to housing and mills and other things like that. What the difference is for this resource center is that it is really designed to help people become very self-empowered and to be able to find things, learn, and be trained on technology and the other areas of literacy we talked about, which is a time investment that requires volunteers to spend a great deal of time helping people work through that. That's the purpose of 211 is a shorter term referral service, and this is more of an investment of helping people gain a deeper knowledge with specialists who focus on older adults.
Thank you, Rob. That was very illuminating. And I loved how you referred to it as a one-stop shop. So like if you knew the resources, go there, but if you didn't know the resources, it's designed and tailored to be that. And it did look like there is an incredible wealth of information there for everyone, like whether you're aging or you know someone who is. And also I really appreciated and liked that there's a stigma perception, like, oh yeah, this is diminishing abilities time, a time of like a phasing out or an aging out, but instead looking at it as like an opportunity of a life full of lived experiences and what a wealth that is and the opportunities that provides people. So that was really cool as well. So thank you.
I just want to have this one thought. Remember, aging is something we start like when we're born. So, and so the spectrum of aging, particularly as far as adulthood, there are a lot of issues that start when we're age 18. And you think about something, we always talk about, well, what about planning if I get hurt and I can't answer, decisions for my own medical choices if I get hurt? Well, that doesn't happen at age 65. That could happen at age 20. And having an advanced directive, age 20, people never think about that, but it's critical if you want to make sure that your wishes are honored, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50. And so these are things that happen across the spectrum. Younger people caring for older individuals caring for younger individuals. The principles are pretty much the same. And I realize that there are the services we've been talking about tonight, often weighted towards older adults, but the fact is it does impact the generations surrounding them. And so the things that we have to talk about are critical, whether you're young or you're old, across the spectrum.
Well said. All right. Well, we are right on time and we have a wealth of questions to go through. So if I can find one, if it's directed towards someone specifically, otherwise it is a catch-all. And if you still have questions, we will continue to answer them as they go through. So feel free, if you haven't lost your chance, put them in the chat and we'll see as many as we can get to. And we'll get started right away. So this one I think I can just read straight up is, my mother has been living in my sister's basement for many years. She doesn't feel like she can afford market rent and therefore she can't move. I've encouraged her to apply for housing help like Section 8 for older folks. I've looked for a bit and can't find exactly where to apply for it. Is there any resources or directions on how you can talk about qualifications? And that she thinks her mom, or I actually don't know who it is. So this individual thinks that their mom could really benefit socially by moving into an apartment near or other older / retired folks. Are there any resources that anyone wants to take a stab at for this?
I can start on that one. So right now we are kind of in a unprecedented time to where our housing choice voucher, or what used to be known as Section 8, the waiting list in the Salt Lake County area is open. So it is open now. We don't know how long it's going to be open for, but it's one of those things where every person that I have come across, if they at any point in time feel like their housing may not be as stable as they need it to be, we're encouraging them to apply. And so you can go, so the website is housingconnect.org, and I can put it in the chat for everybody. But there's a link on there to apply for the housing choice voucher. It says housing choice voucher / Section 8. Because if you've been around for a while or in the helping field, a lot of people will probably forever call it Section 8. So, but they're the same program. So that is available. But also through there is access to income-based housing. There's access to public housing, different things like that that could meet the needs for this individual, and it would be based on their income. There are waiting lists, some programs and kind of sites open up a little bit quicker. There are also sites that are dedicated for 55 plus, 62 plus, 65 plus. So I can kind of find that area that would make the most sense, but there's a lot of different options out there. But I would definitely recommend applying for the housing choice voucher program while it is open right now.
That is great news. That is excellent. Okay, I think that one answers it pretty well. If anyone wants to add an extra, if not, there's one that's kind of attached to that. The next question right after that was, hi, do you have any information on aging in place resources, such as building an accessory dwelling unit to help the aging person avoid stairs?
Do I still have an echo?
No, you're great.
I was only in there once, and I am so sorry to everyone that I had an echo. I didn't know. And I wasn't reading the chat when I was talking. Yes, the in-home services with Tanya Nagahiro's supported aging is the best place to start. So you would call the 385-468-3200, tell them that you're interested in in-home services, and they will get that call down to the case managers, because there are dwellings that are appropriate for all different mobility levels. So, and I would probably be remiss because I wouldn't give it the right information, because it is, an incredible program that Tanya would do it more justice by speaking to the potential client. So.
Yeah, Tracy talks about case managers, and for folks who don't know or aren't aware of the kind of assessments that are available to them through the county is quite amazing, and can help folks assess not only the living conditions, but health conditions and services might be available to them. Sometimes there might be a bit of a wait to get that, but honestly, it's so worthwhile and can really help people narrow down what's available to them. I just want to make one other really quick point when you talk about housing. We are in a unique situation, not only for the things that were discussed, but we've had in a period of time where there's been a lot of older apartment complexes and things taken down and being replaced with other units. And this becomes a policy issue. So when we talk about, it's not just service providing, but it's about how do we impact policy decisions being made so that replacement units have a designated amount for cost affordable older adults to be able to live in these, upgraded units. The problem is that you've got the inventory that they're losing of affordable housing outgrowing the inventory of affordable housing being replaced, and which means older adults are increasingly being displaced and become homeless and become a whole new challenge in the marketplace. And so it's important to be aware of this and just encourage our policymakers to think about affordability. The comment about dwellings on one level, and another thing with that is encouraging the developments and the innovative things being done around aging. that allow people to age in place safely and also have an abode that is safe to visit for older adults. These are all things that we should be conscientious of as we try to be a community that helps support each other.
I wanted to add, and I thank you, Rob is a great advocate for Salt Lake County and our services. If I were to call in to Aging Adult Services, I would reach a person that is able to assess what my needs are by talking to that person. And then we would have a case manager go and see or talk to that person and do a risk assessment on what that person needs. And maybe they only need a Meals on Wheels, or maybe they need Right for Wellness. But maybe they're calling for specific housing situations. That is what is so unique about Aging and Adult Services, is that we continually check up and take phone calls and do reassessments with these individuals that have services through our agency, and they don't feel that they are isolated. And they're also getting a friendly caller if they choose. And so they can have a person call them, and it's a volunteer that's calling them each week to say hello and checking in.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead one question we have, because it ties into senior centers. And so this will be more directed for you, Tracy. In regards to someone that has like Parkinson's, dementia, or some other similar condition, what are the policies and things that are dropping off at a senior center for social engagement? Do the person need to stay with them? What is it like at a senior center, and what can they do?
Well, the first thing is they do have to be independent or have someone with them. So nobody is going to supervise them once they walk through the door. So if somebody could potentially walk off because of dementia or Alzheimer's, somebody would have to be with them and take them to the class or be there with them. That's happened many times where somebody has transitioned from having clarity with their disease, and then it changed really rapidly, and they left the senior center, and then the senior center staff is in, running around trying to find that individual. So it is encouraged that, and pretty much policy, that we would want someone to be there with someone that could potentially harm themselves or walk away is the biggest worry. And we also have the Caregiver Support Program, which there is funding for you to apply for the Caregiver Support Program, which would give you a respite individual that would come in for an entire year. And I think it's $1,200, and you get someone coming in so that the caregiver gets an opportunity to have some time to themselves, even if it's just going in and sleeping, because the caregiver is often not taking care of themselves. And someone that does care for someone with dementia or Alzheimer's or a physical disability is very worn out, and they need someone to come in and give them breaks. And so we offer that through the Caregiver Support Program, which is such a wonderful program and so needed for the caregivers, because we have so many in the Valley.
Thank you. All right. I lost my spot for just a moment. All right. We referenced it before, but didn't quite answer it. So are the services free or really low cost? And so
Okay, so any service that you receive from Salt Lake County is on a donation basis. Nobody's going to ask you for money. You might be, sent a donation envelope, and you can submit money or not. It will not deny you from getting any services, whether it's a Rights for Wellness, whether it's coming in on the van to the senior center, or getting a Meals on Wheels. It will not deny you from getting any service, any meal, anything that we offer. It's all because most everyone is got financial, there's a lot of strains on their finances. And so we want them to engage in our programs, in our services, without feeling that they are not able to because they can't pay for them. And we would never collect money. It would be a donation, only a donation, if they would like to. So.
All right, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
Megan, I think this one might be more directed towards you, but again, anyone has any input, feel free to chime in. It says, how can I ensure my parents are being financially protected from a a sibling situation that says, unfortunately, my sister keeps asking my parents for money and they are on a fixed income. And that may be a very common situation.
Yes, it's a pretty common situation that we deal with on a daily basis. So there's a few options. The biggest thing that we do recognize within our aging, but then within our agency, but also just for all adults, is the right to self-determination. And so it's that idea that individuals have the right to make decisions that feel best to them, or that we and the community will honor those decisions that they're making, even if it doesn't feel like it's in the best interest of other individuals. So that being said, there are some things that they could do. So having that conversation early, which I will say it's an uncomfortable conversation to have at times, but having that conversation with your parents, with loved ones, about how they want their finances secured moving forward. And so that could be through establishing a trust. It could be through updating their will to designate certain agents to act on their behalf. But it really comes down to what they're wanting to do and what decisions they want to make. There's a lot of resources that are out there. You can have a financial power of attorney. You can designate in your living will how you want like assets to be handled, or property, or like your physical belongings. And then also your trust could be kind of that overall piece in establishing that. So there are a lot of things that are out there, but having that conversation early and often is generally that best, because it comes from the idea of wanting to help secure their financial safety for the future, and then helping them and just supporting them in the decisions that they're making.
We can't hear you, Rob.
Thank you. I just want to add a little bit on Megan's comment. This is one of the toughest things to manage, is people have loved ones who abuse that privilege of trust. And if you look at where a lot of the fraud comes from, most of it comes from family. And then if you add your affinity groups to it, it accounts for almost 80% of the fraud. It's not always the person lurking on the other end of the phone line and through the internet. Those are bad, but it's people we know. And getting a family to be able to protect themselves, because that influence, these are supposed to be the trusted others that when they have malintent, this really came out during the pandemic as well, as people became more isolated. Those they were supposed to be able to trust, could easily take advantage of that. And I would just say, I would love for Megan's role and her department to be out of business, in the sense that the best time to deal with fraud is not to get caught in fraud, and because to try to go and repair the damage and all of those things, it's very complicated. And so she talked about finding people you can trust, finding people, setting up systems that will help protect you and help, put that framework in place, because it's just very much a challenge, and people can be very vulnerable and emotional. Just encourage people to be very smart and to try to pick people you're trusting with those decisions that do not have a stake in the game, that they do not have, they're not beneficiaries of something that they're advising you on. And so it's just, a good advice is to get 2 or 3 people around you that you can really balance that input.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it looks like there's a follow-up question that asks, like, how do seniors ask for help with wills and trust? So depending on your income, there are options through like Utah Legal Services. They also have pro bono attorneys that will help with that establishment with senior planning. One thing that I heard recently that's kind of really stuck with me, and I've used it moving forward with myself, because a lot of people are surprised, but I have an advance directive. I have a trust in place. I have all of those things for myself and my family. But the thing that stuck with me is that being listed as an agent or a designator or somebody that makes decisions, it's a privilege in the terms of it's not a right. So it's that idea where a lot of individuals will want to spread that decision making evenly between their children or between family members and different things, and that's not always in their best interest. And so it's that kind of idea that you don't need to go into it saying that I want to be fair and even with everyone. With the decision making, you need to go with who you trust and kind of move forward with that decision, knowing that sometimes it may hurt feelings, but ultimately whoever is in that trusted position will enact your wishes in the best way, and that will positively benefit everybody in the long run.
Well said.
It's very well said. Thank you, Megan. Okay, again, kind of on resources. So throwing this out to the whole group of our experts panels, about someone's asking about advice for retiring and Medicare and what resources might be available for them. Generalized question, but sometimes the generalized ones need the most help.
Well, I can tell you that Medicare and the state health insurance program is in community engagement, and you will find that they can answer your questions because this is what they do. They are an approved Medicare specialist, so they can look at your plan to see what they can see what your health needs are because you're telling them, and they are saying, well, this is covered by this, and this is covered by this. Your best bet is probably going down this path to find a plan that's going to work to cover what your needs are instead of all umbrella encompassing what you may not need. And I have to just chime in. We have a volunteer that's been serving in the SHIP program since 1997. She is the most dedicated. It's like a second career for her. Her name is Mary Boyer. I'm just shouting it out. She takes one phone call a day because Medicare is really complicated, but she has helped so many individuals. So we have a line. You can ask for the Medicare specialist. And when you are getting ready to retire, there are some things you need to do. You have to make some decisions before 65, and you have to make sure that you aren't missing any cutoff dates. So calling us is a way to not get high pressure cells by any means. They are just giving you options on what would be the best plan for you. Now, Medicare is complicated, but my mother loves to dive into it because she's a former federal employee, and so she likes to find the plan that works best for her during open enrollment. And she gets excited that she has saved herself $15 a month on her plan. So it just depends on how much you're invested. I don't want to do that. I want someone at the county to tell me what plan to take because, that's saving me a lot of time. So really, if you're getting ready to retire, the best thing to do, unless you have, an insurance broker that is your best friend, call the county and they can guide you down the road without they're not telling you anything. They're just saying this would be a really good option for you. And it's usually the one that's going to, serve you the best. And they also consider your finances. And open enrollment's coming up. But like I said, I've been around a lot of people that have retired or began the retirement process. And there are some things that you want to check off the list. So possibly give them a call sooner than later if you're getting close to that retirement deadline.
And I know, so one resource that I know in terms of retirement planning and kind of those understanding those questions and kind of those steps without necessarily having to work with like a financial advisor or different things like that is AARP. So they're a great resource that can help kind of understand the steps that you need to take to prepare yourself for retirement and what that can look like moving forward. Even that, like kind of those retirement calculators where if you would retire at this age with this amount of money, what would retirement kind of look like for you? So that's one resource that I know has been helpful for those in the community that didn't require them to pay money to meet with like a financial advisor to go through those options.
Thank you. All right, I think as far as I know, we have one official last question. It's a more lighthearted one. It's directed to you, Tracy. It's about vegetarian or alternative meat options in the senior center and what the possibility of that might be or who to talk to about expanding palettes.
I deliver Meals on Wheels from time to time because volunteers take vacations and I'd like to go and see the clients, and it makes me feel it's humbling. It's very humbling to get out there and do that. You actually forget your woes when you're out delivering Meals on Wheels because it is humbling. Yes, if you have a nut allergy, if you don't want meat, if you don't want fish, if you want it cut up, if you want there are 5 different options that usually cover most everyone. My cats are fighting, if you can hear them, sorry. But when you have a referral intake process, they go through all of that. And then what happens is, for me, if I'm delivering the meals, it's labeled on top. It says X nut, X fish, X whatever. And therefore, we know that it's going to Tracy Gibson, who cannot have fish. And therefore, all the volunteers or the paid drivers are trained to look at those food labels on there. So the requirements, there are several different options when getting Meals on Wheels to hopefully cover the palate of that person that is getting the meal.
Awesome. Very customizable. I love that there's so much emphasis on autonomy and personal direction in like every stage of all of this and all the services that you guys are providing. It's so crucial and it's so good to hear and be repeated. So thank you. As we prepare final thoughts, so I will give you guys a moment to just kind of think of any final thoughts you want to say as we wrap up. There was our health and wellness fitness trainer did a follow-up question, and I would just say reach out to Rob and Tracy personally about options for equipment and more specifics for how you're wanting to engage with the community on that one. So I think Tracy and Rob would be best for that. But as our final kind of question, do you have any last thoughts or things that you want them to take away from this tonight? What would you want them to take away?
I can go first. I would just say that, and kind of to echo what Rob had said before, that it's the services, the resources, kind of the need to kind of engage the community. It's not just for older adults. It's from anybody 18 and older. Once you become that legal adult, there's so many ways that within that intergenerational connection that can happen that benefits everybody. So just look for those opportunities out in the community. It's not always just thinking about your family members. It could be a neighbor, somebody through your faith-based community. There's a lot of different options. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't just once again remind everybody about mandatory reporting, specifically to Utah. If you would have any concerns for abuse, neglect, or exploitation for an older adult or a vulnerable adult, know that our 1-800 number, so the 1-800-371-7897 is the best way to reach out. And just know that there are resources and advocates that are out in the community wanting to help this population. So thank you.
I can add to that, and I really appreciate Megan and the team that does those investigations. That is a really tough job, and there are a lot of investigation referrals. I think that the one thing I would like to leave with everyone is to know that at Aging and Adult Services and at DOS and the Council on the Utah Tax Commission, we are invested in the process of educating and assisting anyone that is interested in, not just the aging process, but finding resources for those that are, pretty much 60 and older, finding advocacy where they need it, finding resources, finding, some pickleball, finding, answers to the things that sometimes frighten us because seeing a neighbor not being well taken care of is sad. And who do we talk to? Or how do we, make some changes in an older person's life? We can answer some of those questions and provide advocacy. And we choose to do that. Many of us have been doing it for 20 and 30 years. And this is where we want to be because we're really invested in our vulnerable population and wanting them to have access to resources and less isolation.
So thank you, Tracy and Megan, and thank you, Heather, for hosting this night. I would just again encourage everybody to take a deep breath, explore the resources, learn about what's available, take your time in making critical decisions. If you don't have confidence about something and you're feeling pressed upon by others to go a particular direction on any decision, health or finance, just step back a little bit and give yourself the space to sort things out. These are very, very important life decisions all along the way. And there are people who are rooting for you, who are there to serve you. And as a community together, we can make good decisions to have a vibrant community of aging. And I just, again, respect you taking the time tonight and just encourage you to be investigative and empowered to make your best life.
Thank you, all of you. You, for our community members here tonight and for our incredible expert panelists. We are so grateful for this wealth of information for such an important topic that affects everyone, because we all know someone or are someone, and we are all a community. So thank you so much, and look forward to our other Let's Be Neighbors, but I wish we could give just a huge round of applause for our panelists tonight, but thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a good night.